Today we're going to work more with factoring using a combination of methods to learn to decide which method we're going to use when we're factoring. So the first step that we've been talking about the last 2 days is we want to first see if there's any common monomials so we can factor those out. Once we have done that, then we're going to check those leftover parentheses for those special cases. Those special cases include if we have a binomial, will imply a difference of squares if we can continue to factor it. If there's a trinomial, then we want to look at that lead coefficient or a value. If it is equal to 1, then we'll use a t-table. If it is not equal to 1, in other words it's greater than 1, then we'll use the AC method. And finally, if we have a polynomial, such, or as we call it, a quadnomial, this is where we're going to use our grouping methods. So if we look at this first example here of 4x squared minus 16, some of you may want to jump right away to, oh, it's a difference of squares. However, before we get there, let's first look at it and say, well, I know that I can divide out a 4. And if I divide out 4, I'm left with x squared minus 4. Now I look at it and say, now I have a difference of squares. So I'm going to create my setup. Don't forget the 4 out front. Square root of x squared is x. Square root of 4 is 2. And we would have plus 2 minus 2. And then this would be our final solution. Moving on to the next example, we have 3x squared plus 6x plus 3. The first thing I see is that I can divide out a 3, which leaves me with x squared plus 2x plus 1. Now that I've factored out that 3, my coefficient of my x squared term, or my a term, is 1. Therefore, I'm going to use a t-table. My t-table needs to multiply to 1 and add to 2. So the only thing I know of is 1 times 1. And 1 plus 1 does in fact give me 2. So I know that my answer is going to be 3 times x plus 1 times x plus 1. Looking at one more example, we have 2x squared plus 6x minus 20. I know that I can divide out a 2, which will give me x squared plus 3x minus 10. And I see that I once again have a coefficient of 1, so I'm going to use the t-table method. We know it needs to multiply to negative 10 and add to 3. So when I do that, I know that because this one is negative and this one is positive, that means that my bigger number has to be positive. So I'm going to take 5 times negative 2, which 5 plus negative 2 is in fact positive 3, which means that I will still have that 2 out front, and then I will have x plus 5 times x minus 2 for a final solution. Your job now is to go ahead and complete this U-Try problem and bring your questions with you to class tomorrow.